Jeff Todd here for MLB Trade Rumors. Today we're going to talk about the Joe Mauer extension with the Minnesota Twins. Was that a historic landmine for that team? I don't know. That's what we'll discuss. Please go down and hit that subscribe button below while we get started. Now, Joe Mauer, of course, ended his career as a first baseman, DH. Not the kind of guy you wanted to have in the lineup every day. Remember, he was sort of a high average but low power guy, the sort of bat that the game came not to love so much in that period towards the end of his career, which wrapped up in 2018. Still was a pretty productive hitter for the most part, but not the kind of guy you wanted to have playing first base for a playoff caliber franchise. But those of us that have a little bit of a deeper memory will certainly appreciate that that's no way to characterize what Joe Mauer was back in 2010 in March when he signed a gigantic extension, and that's what we're going to talk about here today. Now, the reason that this deal is kind of in the news again lately is that JT Realmuto, the Phillies catcher, has been in some talks with the team about a new contract, and I guess Realmuto's camp has viewed the Mauer contract as some kind of a comparable. In my mind, that's just really not accurate to even think about this deal in the context of Realmuto. Two reasons. First of all, it's been 10 years. Secondly, that contract was not really a contract signed by a catcher, was it? It was a contract signed by a guy who is one of the very, very best players in all of baseball. That's no dig against Realmuto, who's an excellent player, but he's not one of the top 5 guys in baseball. That's exactly what Mauer was at the time, and it's why he got a deal that was among the richest contracts ever agreed to. Now, remember when Mauer signed that deal, the context in which it was inked. This is a guy who in 2009 turned in a massive season. Not only did he lead the league in every major offensive category, but he did it while playing a great game behind the dish. So you're looking at the most demanding physical position, super high value, not only direct on the field value, but you think about managing a pitching staff and all the intangible things that a catcher can do to influence the outcome of a game. He did all that, and he hit like a mid-prime Mike Trout. Pretty impressive stuff, and it's understandable then that the Twins went that next spring and did everything they could to lock up a deal. So March of 2010, contract is signed, but it didn't actually kick in until the 2011 season. So 1 year later, which is the only reason they were able to get that deal done, because as it turned out, Mauer had a productive year in 2010, and he would have cost an absolute fortune in free agency. So it was understandable that the Twins went and did this contract this way. 8 years, $184 million was a lot of money at the time, remains a lot of money, but a $23 million average annual value for one of the game's very, very best players. How can you not do it when he's a homegrown guy, has all these extra ways of contributing value to your franchise, to your roster? It was a slam dunk of a contract, and the fact that it didn't work out quite as expected, not nearly as expected, but quite as you might have hoped for a baseline, it doesn't change that. It was the right decision at that time. They made the right call. So how did it work out? Well, Mauer immediately began to run into health issues, and it looked like a problem right from the start. 2011, only played about half a season. The offensive production came down, but he did bounce back and have 2 more really high-level offensive seasons. The biggest problem with this deal was not at the plate. Mauer actually was a pretty substantially above average hitter over the lifetime of that deal. The real issue was in the health department, especially the fact that concussions meant he could no longer line up behind the dish, and that was really what made Mauer special, not just the ability to hit at an astoundingly high batting average, get on base a ton, even if he never really had classic power. That ability to hit at the above average level while playing catcher was what made him so special. And so taking him out from behind the plate and moving him to first base, no, he was not a guy you really optimally would have had at first base. All that being said, when you tally up the wins above replacement, which of course compares a player's total contributions, including what position he's playing and the average offensive ability of a player at that position and every other thing you can throw into the equation, over the lifetime of that 8-year deal, Mauer was still worth about 20 wins above replacement. That would be the average of the tallies from Baseball Reference and Fangraphs, the two major companies that do wins above replacement. So 20 wins above replacement, 180 million bucks. Not terrible value for your money, actually. No, not a contract that you would have signed had you known exactly what you were going to get. But if that was the downside scenario for the Twins, think about the upside that they had in that deal. If Mauer had been able to avoid those concussion issues, if he had been able to stay behind the plate, even if he only hit the same level that he did, as it turned out, he would have been much, much more valuable, no doubt about it. And if he had been able to hit at even a little bit higher level or continue that sort of MVP type production, all bets were off. He could have been, this contract might have been one that we're looking back at as one of the greatest ever signed. So, round it all up, I say that deal was well worth it for the Twins. The guy did get to retire as a legend of the organization. The only question now, is Joe Mauer a Hall of Famer? We won't tackle that here, but do let us know your thoughts in the comments, and please do like the video on your way down.